Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conscious Business Connections, brought to you by the New York City chapter of Conscious Capitalism. My name is Bob Caporale, and I'm joined today by Adam Barone of Sonic Union, located in lovely downtown Manhattan. So, Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bob.
It's really great to have you as a guest. So, Adam, as conscious capitalism is about really companies that embrace the elevation of humanity, even sometimes above profit, right? And a lot of times we think about capitalism and think about it's all about profit and money and so forth. But really, there's so much more to capitalism. And what conscious capitalism really encourages is that companies seek to elevate humanity first, and then profit should come as a result. I'm really interested in talking to you, though, because for those of you out there who are not familiar with this, which should be none of you at this point, but Adam came to us as a nomination from one of his employees, which is really, really great. And so, Adam, that's really kind of the direction I want to talk about is employee engagement and kind of how you set up a culture that makes your employees want to work in your company, which is a big tenet of conscious capitalism. But before we get all that, why don't you tell us a little bit about Sonic Union and a little bit about your company and what you guys do?
Sure. And thanks again for having me on the show.
That.
Sonic Union provides creative sound for mostly content that is sponsored by brands. So that includes commercials, wherever they appear these days, shorter form stuff. We also work on some films, but we're more geared towards the fast pace of the advertising market and more so than episodic, broadcast work, for example. And that being the case, most of our work is generally supervised. So we have in a busy week, we have many more clients in-house than staff even. And we also have 2 staff for every 1 engineer. So because it takes a lot to pull the whole production off very quickly.
Yeah.
Of course, some of that has changed now ever since the beginning of the lockdown. So, but we're still working like crazy, so that's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll talk about that as well. Let me ask a couple more questions about the company. So when you talk about the advertising space and so forth, you guys are doing kind of the post-production, or are you doing the video, mostly the post stuff?
Post-production. We also do original composition as well. We work with a lot of companies that provide music to us, and we're the partner for the mix, the post mix. Or an external sound designer, but more and more we're being involved, being asked to be different parts of something to do with sound. And we're the last stop of the chain usually, and then it's on the air the next day. So when it gets to us, everything else, people may have been working on the production for weeks or even months, everything from the original spec or the treatment to the budgeting to the shoot and whatever. By the time it gets to us, they're kind of really recording things and packaging it up, making it perfect and all the different deliverables, and then it's on the air.
That is so awesome. Now, do you have to have like so I'm a music technology geek, right? So yeah. I love this. I can go on forever about this, but I have to ask, do you have like a traditional recording studio like you might see a band go into, or is it a little bit different setup than that?
It's different. In some ways it's more like home theater environments. There is a lot of technology in the rooms as well as in the central server stacks in each of the 2 locations. And then those 2 are tied together, but you don't see it all. A lot of it's software and it's plugins and a lot of that kind of thing. You don't see the consoles in our rooms anymore. It's more driven by keyboard mouse type of thing, but there's just a ton of software and processing stuff going on in the background.
Really cool. And a lot of expertise, I imagine, that has to drive all that. So that's really
awesome.
I
do want to say that a lot of our engineers are musicians by trade or by hobby, I should say, or by background. And several of them play out in bands and stuff like that. So there is a lot of, I'm sitting in a studio right now with there's several different instruments in it, but they're not used in sessions so much as for just getting the enjoyment out of, the thing that you really love to do.
That's so awesome. Well, I will tell you, if I flip this camera just 180 degrees, you would see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keyboards stacked up like, like the old classic rock bands that I grew up with.
That's great.
And, so this is my studio / video cast studio, whatever, but really, really cool. So like I said, I go on about that forever, but let's talk about conscious capitalism a little bit. So like I was saying in the beginning, what was really interesting about your story is that, your company was nominated by one of your employees. Say, we put out the call to say if you're a conscious company. and one of your employees said, yeah, this is the way we behave. And I think when you and I first talked, it was like, we're
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't know. But talk to me a little bit about, just naturally the culture that you uh you know try and promote with your employees for your
Yeah.
company.
Sure. I can't tell the story without telling how it came about in a sense, and I have to bring my partners in on this one because really the three of us are like, there's four of us actually now, but three of us that started it. We are the heart and the soul and the head and the muscle, and we each have our own role in that. And I won't even say which one's which. Their staff can probably guess. I know they know. We do step into the other roles at times, but they're not our primary. We all
Yeah.
stay in our own area, and we're effective. And I think the company, well, first of all, we each benefit from that. I don't have to be everything to everybody, so that allows us to have, I think, the kind of culture that we do is that we're not all the same type of person and partner, and we work together. I started the company with my partner, Mike, who he and I met in college as freshmen in the student-run TV station. So,
Wow.
so the bond and the familiarity and the trust, everything goes way back. And then bringing in our other partners, soon after, um, we just get along really well. And I think it helps that we get along so well and we enjoy each other so much and always have. And there's so much trust that I think that the staff must feel that.
Yeah.
I've certainly worked for people where there's not necessarily that dynamic and the staff feels that. So I have to assume it's the same in reverse.
That's so awesome. Now, are there any core values? I mean, sometimes it's just natural, right? You say like, this is the culture that I have, and this is, people like to work in.
Yeah.
But are there any core values that you really try and instill or promote within your company that you think is kind of in line with this conscious capitalism
Yeah.
thought?
I don't know if it's just our upbringing, none of us really came from sort of what we call money. Most of us are from like Western New York, school teacher parents and that kind of thing.
Yep.
Growing up bowling and stuff, we just don't have that sense. We're already in New York and, quote unquote, made it in the sense that our business is still here 12 years
Yeah.
later. But we didn't come from that or have to chase that. I guess maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
I'm just reflecting myself. Where does it come from?
Yeah.
But and because of that, there's a tendency to not remember very much what it's like to be 22, 23 and have three roommates. You don't really want to come in and be like, hey guys, did you see the new thing I bought? Or check out my new, you don't want to be showing off that the fruits of the capitalist risks that we took.
Right.
So there's a sense of not doing that, and I think that kind of helps. It doesn't you don't get that big divide, which in large corporations looks like a huge range between executive CEO pay and lower thing. But here in a smaller group, it's just kind of nice. We all share it.
Yeah.
Um,
And in
it's
large
I
companies,
don't know
it
if it's a very,
is it is that huge difference, right? I mean, there's just about no
yeah.
getting around it. But it seems like you guys have much more of a close knit team, and you're part of that team, which I think is an important part of the culture, right?
Yeah, and we know that we got to take care of our people to take care of the clients. So people say the clients first, but really the staff is first, because without that, it would be back to just us founders that have everything to risk. Then we would just have to do it all ourselves, basically, because we wouldn't be able to trust anybody because we don't take care of them enough. They wouldn't be motivated. But in this case, no, our staff really is put out front and we're really in the back. Like, you've never heard of me before. That's fine. That's by design. I don't need to be out front. I'm really here to work and support everybody else and make sure I just stay a few months ahead of the operation everywhere so that the staff can go day by day without having any major problems.
Yeah, and that's what struck me when we first spoke is that, a lot of business owners, they have to actually really work hard at being conscious business owners to their employees. By the way, I don't take away from that. I don't,
No,
I think that that's fine. But I think for you, it comes very natural. It's just kind of the way I am. Treat people like
that's
I would
kind
want
of
to be
what it
treated,
is.
right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I can be another way. Other people, it's natural for them to maybe pursue it a different way, and that's natural for them, and they're very successful for it. I just don't. I can't do it. I don't have the intestinal fortitude to do it that way, so I do it this way, and we tend to attract people who appreciate that or like that, and that works. And we have, all of our engineers are all original. We've never knock on wood, never lost one, but you know, we must be doing something right if people want to stick around.
Yeah.
And you know, they are definitely doing something right to keep us here as well. So,
Such a great, cooperative attitude, and really unassuming on your part, which is
yeah,
really cool. So let's talk about there's two things I want to go to before I get to the COVID thing, because I think it's really an important element of how you're dealing with this. But I want to talk about suppliers as well, because you said something that really struck me, which is, we have suppliers that come in, and I'm sorry, not suppliers, but customers. I'm using the wrong term.
mm,
But we have customers that come in and they want to watch your work. Right now, being an artist myself, that's a hard thing, right? That's a really hard thing when someone's kind of looking over your shoulder and kind of saying, you have to do
yeah.
this, you have to do that. Part of my business is that as well. How does that work for you? I mean, and how do you think some of these same practices kind of apply to your clients when they're essentially looking over your shoulder, right?
Right. Well, first of all, I think the number one skill our engineers and our producers have is working with clients, and then I think the sound stuff is almost secondary. A lot of people can be trained to do that. You know, there's an ad in the subway to learn how to do Pro Tools, but work with a room that includes an executive creative director who does not necessarily dress in an executive sort of way, but has a very creative bent and is responsible for an enormous multinational brand, as well as a junior assistant editor who 2 years ago was in college, and they're all in the same room, and there's conversation happening, and our engineers are really skilled at knowing when to speak up, when not to, what to yield to, what to pivot to, what to keep in the back of your mind, and not embarrass anybody. And the other thing we always remember is it's really their work, and we're helping them do their work. We're helping them execute their work. So it's not our thing. So we're not really here to be critical of it, or they're critical of us. We're just helping them get what they've usually got picture what we're working to. And so we're really just trying to get everything to go along with what is existing for that and make it even better.
Yeah, and this is what strikes me as well. A lot of companies will say customers first, but when you deal with them, it's pretty clear that they believe customers exist for their purposes, right? Instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
But you don't have the luxury of that at all. I don't think that doesn't sound like it's in your DNA,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, you'd be out of business pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's hard when you walk in. You really can't tell who the staff is and who the clients are, unless you see somebody sitting at a desk behind a large screen computer and on a work phone. And I guess you would assume that person probably works here. But you know, I've also seen clients sitting at our staff's desks, and that won't be happening in the current environment anymore, obviously.
Right,
but
right.
you know, you really can't tell. So when someone new comes in, you know, they're always like, I can't really tell who the employees and who the clients are, because we all just sort of get along well, and we built our place that it's for the clients, and we're here in case they need us.
Yeah,
It's not our studio, our office, and they're coming to our place. It's their place.
yeah.
They're paying for it, and we're here if you need us. So they feel very comfortable here because of that. My office is a tiny little closet in the back, not the front window view over the park. That might be an example of conscious capitalism, in the sense that when when we leased the space, the guy who had it before me said, "Oh, this will be your office. You'll be up front in the, you know, two window corner office." And it's like, no, no, no. I'll be in the back under the low duct with the. I don't need to be. This is for clients and staff up here. This is prime spot, man. Not for me. I could.
Right. And there you go, right? It's
I don't
about
need that for my profile. I don't. They need it, not me.
It's
So
so great. And it's about the stakeholders, right? Which
yeah,
I think is so important. Well, you talk about COVID, and obviously we're in the middle of this. I don't know when people will actually be watching this. Some will watch it within a week of being released, and some may watch it next year, but I don't think anybody's going to forget this crisis that we're
yeah,
in currently. But this is very interesting for your business, right? There's got to be a lot of pivoting that you had to do, because you're a studio-based business where clients
yeah,
come to you, and
yep,
you've created that environment. Now no one's allowed there, I imagine.
right.
How do you maintain this culture through this crisis?
Yeah, I'll speak to that because it would be easy to get off tangent and talk about how we're able to keep doing the work, and with remote workflow. That's a separate thing. We've already proven we can do it. So the main thing is the culture. And I will say, we do talk, you know, use platforms like Zoom and Slack and other platforms, Skype. We do have different group meetings, and I wouldn't even call them meetings, really. They're like more like water cooler talks and sprints and happy hours, and you know, stuff like that. We're having them much more frequently than we ever did. And we agreed actually this morning in an hour and a half one with our engineering people that we want to continue it. Even when we're in the studio, we want to still do it, but do it like Sunday night or off hours where we can all be home and relaxed and enjoy each other and not have to sort of come in early at 8 o'clock and have a meeting.
Yeah.
So, because with clients here, we can't just schedule meetings during the day. We have to always do it off hours.
Right.
We agreed that we want to do that weekly. Like
That's
everybody
just what you're
wants
going to
that
do.
connection. And the learning that I see happening from one to the other is we've had to figure out different workflows. And hey, you know what I just try is it is so incredible to watch it. And usually I will say it is our more younger staff teaching the older staff a couple of new tricks. And then they realize they get about 80% of the way through it. And then they realize they need the knowledge of the people who are most senior to make the rest of it work in the real world, the clients.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant to watch it. It's really
That's
great.
so cool.
Yeah.
Now, any challenges in keeping the culture together? I mean, even though you're doing
Yes.
those Zoom calls, which I think is really cool, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot more of that even in my personal life. People I haven't talked to forever.
Yeah.
We're doing weekly Zoom calls. I'm like, why weren't we doing this forever? I don't understand. But it also can be challenging, I think, to try and keep that group dynamic. What kind of challenges do you deal with?
Yeah, well, we have some staff. We're fortunate to be able to say that we have not furloughed or laid off anyone at this time. It's the middle of May. So it's been 8-9 weeks. We have a good quarter of the staff that we're really not making use of, but we're continuing to carry them along, and not just financially or with benefits, but also they're invited to everything that we do, event. We give them little projects now and then. People check in on them. I call them up. I know what it would be like to be on the other end of that. So try to remember that. So there are some things that part is a little difficult to keep people that way, especially with all the unknowns.
Right.
We have people who have, obviously, like a lot of companies, people have maybe like, I've gone to my parents' house in another state. They're not really sure when they're coming back, and there's that unsettling feeling. That's also part of the culture challenge. But so far, I think there seems to be a sense that they trust that we're going to be making the right decisions for everybody, and we're not going to fall victim to a feeling that the abundance is running out.
Right.
And that we will be here. We have a long view. We're sure people want to eventually come back in. No, they don't want to maybe right now, and we don't really want them to right now. But,
right.
But they will eventually want to work in a room, real time, in person, listening to things the way it should be and everything. So once that will come back, just like people do want to be at a sporting event again and all those other things and be in a restaurant.
Yeah. And you have to be ready for that, right? I think that's such an important piece of this whole thing.
And I think by being careful and always putting the company first rather than us as the individual partners, or saying how much can I take out this year, and be careful with our borrowing and doing it. We do a lot of like crazy metrics and financial ratios and stuff like that for a small company, because it's useful to see trends over time. It gives you some satisfaction to say, you know what, that happened back in that area, but look, we can see that over time we were able to recover. So let's just trust that that's going to be the case again. What did we do then? And it's a little more scientific that way rather than just a gut.
Yeah, right.
Like, well, I don't know where this is going, so I'll just better take my chips off the table. We try not to do that. And we also have a really unique model of sharing revenue with all of our engineering staff and our producers.
Wow.
So half the staff is on performance pay, but it's shared. It's not individual where they're competitive with each other. It's pooled.
Interesting.
And so when one engineer has, let's say, a booking or a session, everybody gets a piece of that. So if it happens to switch at the last minute from one engineer to the other, there's none of that feeling of, oh, well, wait a minute, what happened? I thought I had that job and now I don't. Like, no, I make the same either way. I just want to hear. And it was
so
very
cool.
complicated to make that work, but it's worked out well. But the point I wanted to emphasize is that idea came from our staff.
Yeah.
It came from the staff, not from management like down. So.
Yeah. And that's so cool. I've worked in businesses that, they incentivize employees. Many businesses do that, but then there is that complexity, right? So if somebody lands a job, but the right thing for the client is to switch to someone else, well, then there's a fight, right? Like, wait a minute, I'm doing the work, but that person gets the credit and all this other stuff. So the fact that you can solve for those types of things is really, really cool. And again, speaks to this conscious culture that you seem to be seem to be embracing. So just an
Yeah.
awesome example. One last question is, with this COVID crisis, besides the Zoom meetings and the happy hours and things like that, I mean, it does seem like this is going to change the face of the way a lot of companies do business, right? Do you think for your industry, there's going to be any long lasting effects? Let's say a year from now, the virus is eradicated. I don't know. Let's
Mhm.
hope, right? But do you think any habits kind of transfer over that, regardless of the virus being here or not, will continue?
Yeah, I do think it's a challenge to manage the workday and I guess I call it the incursion um, into the evening or into someone's home life. So that's a challenge, but we don't think that's going to change really anytime soon. We expect that most of our staff will have the ability to work from home forever,
Mhm.
and some of them may primarily work from home for a very long time. Um, and s- but eventually, most people that need to be here for client-facing stuff will be here,
Yeah.
or one of the studios. But we are going to make sure that people have the flexibility to be able to do that, especially over the long, slow ramp to get back up to speed. We may have people work on a session they're booked from 9 to 2, and the idea is that they'd stick around for the rest of the day and see if they have a revision. They might leave, go home, but be able to do those revisions unsupervised from home
Which I
or
think is
supervised
super cool.
virtually, which we wouldn't have thought before because that would have seemed kind of unfair. Like, wait a minute, are you really? How come you get to leave and this and that? But people are building up their workflow and their reachability to the point where it can feel sort of seamless. Of
Yeah.
course, if we're the only ones doing that and everybody else is in person, it might that those people might be at a disadvantage. But if
Yeah.
that's sort of accepted that our clients are doing the same thing and the world's kind of doing that for a while, then I think it'll be okay and work. People are enjoying. Some people really like not having the commute and stuff for a change as much
Especially
as they
into
miss
Manhattan.
stuff.
Yeah, especially into Manhattan. I mean, and obviously from the area, and I love it and all, but
Yeah,
the commute can be really,
yeah,
really challenging.
yeah.
And I think this is a really important lesson that a lot of companies are going to be learning, right? Is that, look, if you can trust your employees, give them more flexibility, that makes them happier. That's going to result in profit, right? You don't have to force them into a situation that may make them uncomfortable. And I think
No,
that could be a really, really important lesson for a lot
yeah,
of companies.
yeah.
We'll see how that all goes, but it sounds like you're definitely on the right path. So Adam, listen, I want to make sure before we go, or before I let you go, that you give our audience a chance to find out more about your company. Where could they find out more about Sonic Union?
Well, of course, there's the old website, sonicunion.com, which is a great backstory. I'll be happy to tell you someday how I got that URL. I bought
It
that
doesn't
before we
sound like it
started
would
the
be easy.
company. I got it from a guy in Kazakhstan for like $100. It took a long time to
Whoa.
find the guy. It's a great story.
Yeah.
Um, but of course, there and in all the social media channels. I do enjoy engaging on LinkedIn with several colleagues and peers, and I stay very much in touch with the people of my former industry, which was the cinema advertising industry,
Yeah.
and multimedia production before that. And I enjoy learning from lots of different people, and I'm always learning. I have to say I'm very fortunate. I had incredible mentors as former bosses, and I had incredible former business partners too before I was in this business that I learned from. And it's really my hat, and it goes all the way back to my first job, and
Yeah.
even as a teenager, and really, really great people that were great mentors to me.
So cool. Well, I have to tell you, I have a small media studio, myself, like the stuff I do my music through and stuff like that. And somebody is actually holding my URL hostage as we speak. So maybe I'll send you on and see if you can
Yeah,
negotiate. But anyway,
yeah.
listen, it's really been great having you as a guest. I want to make sure before I wrap up the show that I do a shout out for the sponsors of the New York City chapter of
Mhm.
Conscious Capitalism, the Tomiak Foundation, and the Core Club. Without your generosity and support, programs like this would not be possible. So we thank them. We also thank you, the audience, for joining us. Obviously, if you liked what you heard, you learned something, go ahead and give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends. Trying to spread the word about how businesses can act in more conscious ways, which will make for happier employees, happier customers, and hopefully bring profit as a result of that. So, with all that said, Adam, again, thank you so much for joining. It's been a
Thank
real
you, Bob.
pleasure.
I really enjoyed it too.
Awesome. It's really great. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you back here on another episode of Conscious Business Connections. Thanks.